Okay, so the surprise question that I want to ask you is, I don't know, I just want to hear your thoughts about like dog ownership.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know,
Sure.
it's not something I know very much about. Like I've never had a dog like as an adult. We had one as kids for
Hmm.
briefly,
Yes.
but you have had multiple dogs now, and because you had what was
Yeah.
it, Emmett Brown,
Emmett. Yeah. Dr. Emmett Brown.
Emmett Brown, in
Hmm.
college, I believe, or
Hmm.
thereabouts, and
Yeah.
then
Right out of college, pretty much. Yeah.
and now you have Mason.
Probably the worst timing to have a dog was when I had Emmett,
Mhm.
um, because I was just out of college and I was on the road all the time. Um, and then I moved to New York like a year and a half after having him. So I didn't have Emmett for all of that long. But yeah, yeah. And then Nellie was our childhood dog,
Mhm.
which I was trying to think about her and put like, I guess, insert some pieces of the puzzle to try to understand that whole dynamic, because I think I was too young to really remember too much of that.
Mm.
Um, do you remember much about her?
Yeah, I mean, classic looking golden retriever.
Sure, yeah.
Um, energetic, very sweet dog. I maybe some of my memories have been patched in by the photos that we have of us, playing with the dog. But I do have like glimpses in my mind of Nellie as a puppy, really adorable.
Yeah.
But as the story goes, she was too big for our relatively small, backyard at the time, and had just more energy than
Mm.
really we were able to deal with. And I think that we eventually the family kind of had it adopted by a farm family. Apparently, that actually did happen. This wasn't just like the metaphorical farm
Yeah.
family that
Like
adopted the
going to a
dog.
farm
Yeah.
upstate. Yeah. She'll
um,
be running with the bunnies and
yeah.
the yeah. Yeah, it's so funny because I really consider the current dog that we have, Mason, to be the first dog in my life
Mm,
um because it's the first time I feel like um it's been done, I don't know, in some sort of complete way. He's only 4 years old, so it's like he's in the first third of his life. Hopefully he lives
yeah.
for longer than 12 years. But Emmett, I had when I was on the road a lot, and I had Emmett when I was living with people that had two other dogs. So it was really easy to have a puppy. Like Emmett was probably like 8 weeks old when I got him, and we had two other adult dogs in the house. So he learned really quickly like how to behave amongst those dogs, especially going outside. Like the idea of like house training or potty training a dog to me was, I didn't understand what that meant because I just had a dog that would follow the other dogs out to the backyard very easily,
Mm,
um, and do his business. But I guess it maybe is akin to like the idea that, um, and I'm not making this comparison, I swear, but it's like I'm guessing that if you have a human child, like you are not prepared for that no matter what you do. And
mm,
I think that having a puppy where if you're not really aware of like how to care for one, there's no amount of reading or research that you can do that's going to prepare you for this individual, because that's what they are. They're individuals. Like there's no like catch-all thing where it's like, oh, if the baby's crying, just feed it. It's like, no, your baby might have an illness or an allergy or some sort of thing that's going on, that will make it more difficult to figure out. So Mason is really the first real dog ownership that I feel like I've had, because a lot of restless and sleepless nights, a lot of frustration trying to figure out his deal, like what was his thing and why was he doing this, that, and the other. But the reward comes after a while, after they develop into a whole dog. For a while
mm,
they're just this gangly thing that
mm.
doesn't do what you say and kind of does what they want.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, did you do like what I would call maybe formal training with Mason? Did you bring him
no,
to a okay?
No, I think the only thing that I was prepared for mentally and with some level of experience was understanding how to quote unquote train a
Mm,
dog. And by that, I just mean like the very simple things like how to sit, how to stay, lie down, how to get them to recall, which I think is probably the biggest and most difficult thing for a lot of dog owners, after a dog is of a certain age, is if you're out at the park and your dog is far away from you, how do you get the dog to come back to you
mm,
all like 10 out of 10 times, which is not easy to do, because especially in a place like New York City, there are so many distractions. And it's like, that's the big worry. It's like, oh my God, like, oh, there goes that squirrel. Is it going to come back to me? What's going to get hit by a car, or somebody going to take the dog? So I was prepared for that. So there was no formal training really needed for any of those things. And he's very food motivated, so it was kind of easy to train him.
Yeah. And I mean, that took how many months would you say till you felt like confident that, he's going to come back when you summon him?
I think the only point where we were put up against it that I realized it was okay probably came when he was like over 3 years old. Like, he didn't master that skill for a long time because we live in the city. When we walk him, he's always on a leash. And I think it's a more common thing when you're elsewhere to just kind of let your dog either roam around. If you're out in the middle of a park or something, you're just going to let your dog go. And that's how it's going to be, because there's nobody around. There's nothing around. I think that's a really bad thing and a bad way to get associated with your dog, because I don't know, you could get into the whole like mess of the idea of like not having your dog on a leash is like, well, you don't know how other people are going to behave. You don't know how your dog is going to behave. And you also don't know how other people's dogs are going to behave. So if you have a really friendly dog and it's like, oh, he doesn't need to be on a leash, like that could be Mason. Like, Mason's not an aggressive dog. But, if we let him run around and he goes around a corner and we can't see him and there's like a pit bull on the other side of that, maybe that pit bull is really nice, but having a dog like rush up to him, like maybe that triggers that dog and then your dog dies because you were being irresponsible. So our first real test of that was we were in Maine in Acadia Park, and it's the kind of trail where there's just like, there wasn't a lot of people on it. And we, I guess foolishly, not totally foolishly, because it's not really that big of a deal, but like foolishly, we had Mason off leash because we like to let him wander while we hike. And he got far away from us and we couldn't see him anymore. And we were in a place where there are cliffs, and it's like, oh, we should probably get him back. And I had been training him on that walk to respond to a whistle. So now he responds to that whistle because he knows if he comes, he gets like his favorite treat, which is, basically anything. He eats anything.
His favorite treat, any food.
Any food, yeah. The only thing he doesn't like is lemon.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Now, I mean, not to get too deep into it, if you want to on this podcast, but he had issues with peeing, right?
Oh yeah.
Is that completely resolved now, or is it still like occasionally?
Yes. Yeah, it's resolved. The issue is that in where it is never resolved, and this is something that a lot of dogs have, and even if they may grow out of it, they still have it, which is this idea of submissive peeing, where if a dog is afraid or really worried that you're going to be like extra alpha around them, they'll pee to show that they're like, no, I'm not trying to challenge you. And that's something that his breed kind of has. And a lot of dogs have it, even the oldest and most well-trained dogs. Like, if you catch the dog going through the trash and you like scold the dog, or like you grab it by the collar to like put it in its crate, it might pee because it knows it did wrong and it's trying to show you like, oh, I'm not trying to like take your place or whatever. So in that sense, he'll never get over it. But in the sense that he has stopped just doing that anywhere, anytime, that has been solved. And that was, oh my God, some of the most frustrating moments of my life was dealing with that and figuring it out. And that's what I was kind of referring to earlier, is that I guess as they age, you start to see their personalities form, and you start to see little cues about who they are. And I'm guessing that, you experience that as a parent of human children. Somebody can explain that to me because I don't have kids, but like, there's got to be a point where you start to see, oh, he's got a little sense of humor, or he's got, proclivities for this or that. And Mason, we had to figure out that he just didn't know how to pee. Like straight up, he just didn't know how to pee. He would lie down and pee. And that was like the biggest mystery to us, is like trying to understand, like, well, we've been watching him. When did he pee? I didn't see him like go raise his leg or like, squat down. He just laid down anywhere and would pee and then get up and go about his business. And we were just like, so confused.
It was a little bit of a mystery. You had to kind of deduce like what was going on, and then I guess go after the triggers that would lead to it.
It wasn't even triggers. It's just that's how he thought he was supposed to do it. I mean, he's young. We got him when he was 8 weeks, I think. Maybe no. 12 weeks, something like that. Like in the 3 to 4 months range, I think is where we got him. So 12 to 16 weeks. And we learned that his foster parents were putting wee pads in his bed. Um,
Hmm.
and so not only was he learning that peeing in his bed was okay, but he was learning that like, well, if this is where I pee, but it's also where I sleep and lie down,
Hmm.
I think he just in his own little dog brain put two and two together that I guess I'm supposed to like lie down and pee here.
Yeah.
And then he just would lie down and pee everywhere. Like
Yeah.
that's just how he would do it. So yes, it was a mystery to crack that and figure out how like what exactly and why he was doing it that way. And then it just became a level of general frustration and trying to solve the problem that I think just added a lot of stress around him in the house. Where, you know, anytime we tried to walk him to take him outside, he would just pee when we put the leash on.
Oh,
And
okay.
then, you know, step by step. So I think most dogs take maybe like 8 months to figure out the whole, oh, I go outside, I don't go in the house
Mhm.
thing. But Mason took about 12 to 14 months to like really solidly understand that,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not supposed to do that in here. Which I think may be tougher because we live in the city and we have an apartment building. It's not just like right out to the backyard,
Yeah.
which would be much easier. I've learned a lot about dog ownership with this dog, as I've said, you know, it's a learning
Um,
curve.
okay. So, I mean, it's, I mean, I assume he goes like 2 times a day, 3 times a day, something like that.
He walks 3 times a day. So he
Okay.
gets like basically 2 long walks and one short one. And where, how those get divvied up
Yeah.
is, you know, randomized, you know, it's like what we're doing, how he's doing, whatever. If it's raining or not, he's a big pansy for the rain. So it's like, but yeah, he'll go out 3 times a day,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious, like you've alluded to the idea of comparing like your ownership of the dog to like having an actual child, and I'm curious if that has, I don't know, changed your personal impression of like your willingness or desire to actually like have children through the experience of having like a pet that you're taking care of. And being a cat owner, it definitely has changed my experience somewhat. So I'm just curious what your
Yeah, well, you kind of treat them like your kid, you
yeah,
know. It's like it's the only other living thing that you're taking care of, you know,
yeah,
in that sort of situation. So, yeah, I'm sure there are lots of parents of human children out there that that would just scoff at the concept that this is anything like parenthood
sure.
because it can't possibly be. But I think I've come around to the concept that at least in pandemic times, um, like plants are the new pets, animals are the new kids,
Okay.
and children, like real kids, are you might as well have like an exotic animal. Like you are only going to have kids, I feel like right now, if you have the means to do that. And that just means like you're a tiger king, you know. It's like you decided, oh, we're just going to have this exotic thing in our house that, you know, is unruly. It's got to be somewhat similar, but probably just not to the same level of exhaustion and worry, you know, because it's like, I don't know, a child is more important than a dog. And just like simply put, I mean, my dog is more important to me than anyone else's kids are.
Yeah.
But I get the concept that like kids are more important,
You
like
put the human species
overall. Yeah. It's like,
first. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
Um,
mean, I'm curious if your impression of the parents of human children, which is a funny phrase, has changed through the course of this. I mean, when you see, it's a typical scene, in certain parts of the city, lots of parents with strollers walking around or, trying to, shuffle their kids into like a brunch place for brunch or something on Sunday when it's super crowded and nobody's cooperating. I'm just curious if your impression of that lifestyle or maybe your sympathy for it has changed over time after going through these experiences with Mason. So,
yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think if anything, it's given me a taste of it. You
mhm,
know, it's not quite the whole meal, but it's given me a
sure.
taste of, I guess, maybe what it would be like. The difference just being that like Mason will forever just be kind of a 2, 3 year old toddler for his entire life, whereas like kids grow up and they
Yeah.
start talking and running around and disobeying you. I guess dogs kind of do that too, but I think the biggest thing that it worked out for me, I have or had before Mason, I would struggle to fall asleep. It would take me like 45 minutes sometimes to fall asleep, no matter how tired I was or how late it was, it would just take me that long to fall asleep, and I didn't know really why. And Mason solved that real quick because he had to go out like 10 times a day. And sometimes that meant like 4:30 in the morning. And it would be that sort of interrupted sleep where it was like when I think you're supposed to gauge their age in months with how many hours they can go without being let out, or how many hours they can go like while they're asleep or something like that. So when Mason was 3 months old, he was going out basically every 2 to 3 hours. And that was like consistently throughout the 24-hour period. Like we would maybe get 6 hours out of him where he would sleep and not have to go pee. But that would mean like the last walk was like 12:30 or 1:30 in the morning. And then we would wake up at 5:30, 6:30 in the morning. But then the day was started. You just didn't get to just go back to bed. Or if you did go back to sleep, it was only for 90 minutes or 2 hours and then get up again and got to do it again. And the fact that there was just nowhere to just let him out and do his thing meant every time, stupidly in the winter was when we got him. So it'd be like, put on all the clothes and, you know, like you get your boots on and everything's got to go outside. And then you're outside for a half hour, rinse and repeat. So I think it gave me that ability to fall asleep. Now I fall asleep in 5 minutes, you know, if I'm tired and like ready to do that. And I take that as a small sampling of what parents must go through with just like a single infant, because it's got to be the same. Like I'm sure they just never sleep, or if they do, it's only like 2 hours at a time, but I'm sure that just lasts for much, much longer because kids are needy. And, you know, it's like once a dog is 14 months or, you know, a year and a half old, like they're fine. They're adults, basically, you know, they're young adults, but they're adults and they kind of take care of themselves. So
and they also can't like really speak to us, so they can't come to us with complex demands.
Right. Yeah, I guess if you know, I clearly love dogs. I mean, here we are, we're going to spend all this time just talking specifically about dogs, and I'm the only one with one in this conversation. So clearly I love dogs, but something that evolutionarily speaking that I don't like about dogs, because it kind of breaks my heart, is that because dogs are pack animals, they will feign being okay because they don't want to be left by the pack. So if the dog isn't feeling well or is injured or something along those lines, they will power through. Even if you're on a walk or something, they'll just power through because they don't want to upset the balance of the pack. And so even more to the point that like a dog can't tell you, oh, my stomach hurts or something like that, they will actively like ignore it and make it seem like they're okay because they don't want to upset that balance. So more often than not, if there's something wrong with Mason, it will take probably an extra week before we figure out there's anything wrong, because he won't indicate towards that, you know, unless it's like something super obvious, like a limp, you know, it's like that you can see pretty easily. But otherwise it's it's hard to peg, like, is he okay? Or is he just, you know, like just a little off? Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Just from my own experience with cats, I mean, cats are notoriously stoic. I mean, they can have pretty bad things happening to them, and obviously they don't have the means of expressing themselves with facial expressions or anything like that. So it's kind of a similar game where you have to really be very attuned to the subtler signals that they're giving off to know that anything is wrong. And that's definitely a quibble, if you will, that I have with pet ownership for sure. But like on the larger scale, it's sort of, I feel like I'm probably in the 95th percentile of people who can detect those subtle signals of how cats are feeling based on little things like what their tail is doing, or, you know, whatever, how they're walking and all that kind of stuff. And that means that 95% of the world is worse than me at being able to detect that something's wrong with their cat, which sort of means in turn that there's like a lot of cats that probably like are not getting the help that they want as soon as they actually need it, because people are used to being like, oh no, they look fine. So I hate thinking about that, and I always kind of feel like I have to be an evangelist of sorts for like telling people that, you know, there are these signals that you need to look for. But
well, that comes from us having cats when we grew up. You know, we had cats for 15 years and we saw them from start to finish. And you now have a cat that you've had for what, like this is probably like year 6 or 7 that you've had.
Longer than that, I think 8 years altogether. So
you really not only know kind of how a cat behaves, but you also know how Edgar behaves. And so
Yeah.
it's gonna make it much easier for you to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is interesting. I mean, I would not consider myself a dog person or a cat person. I'm
Mhm.
both. Like I just love animals and I would have a cat if I felt like that would be conducive to our lifestyle.
Mhm.
But it's so funny to me how different they are. It's just dogs are just crazy and they're like, you know, they're just, and cats are kind of like living pieces of art in your home. I know they can be goofy and they can like do stupid things and run around, but the majority of time a cat is like sleek
Yeah.
and like, you know, slinking through the house or something like that. They're not just straight wild, you know. It's like dogs are either sleeping as Mason is right now, or he's like entertaining himself like, oh, I'm
He's
just gonna
engaged
scoot
in
around.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, which is just kind of funny. So I guess it makes it even harder as a cat owner, like to figure that out, because if they're already, their baseline is kind of even keeled, it's even harder to
Right.
see those little off moments that they may have.
Yeah, I think it's based on personality for sure, like to a degree. When I know what Edgar's rhythm is, like down to
Mhm.
the minute in the day. And so it's like if he's not doing something at a certain time, like that's the first like, huh, wonder why that is. And then if the next thing doesn't happen, I'm like, okay, that is slightly concerning. And then by the third, thing that moment on his daily schedule that he misses, like I'm pretty much like, okay, I think something's probably wrong. So maybe it's time for vet or whatever. But
You're also really routine based, and I think
very
animals
much.
are routine based. So
Yeah.
that's probably a really good dynamic that you have. Dogs are super routine based. It's like if you
Mhm.
interrupt that, if you as the person in that dynamic interrupt that, it's funny how that throws the animal off.
Yeah.
Like, wait a second, like I don't know. I think the key recent thing that I noticed this year with Mason is that we had a time change recently, and it did not matter. He knows when he's supposed to be fed dinner.
Right.
And it's like, even though we had our time change and meant, oh, you're going to eat like an hour later than normal. It's like, no, he is adamant. Like, I know what time it is.
Yeah.
I can tell this is what I'm supposed to eat. And it's funny how they are so in tune to that routine and that rhythm. I don't think I've ever noticed anything quite like that, but I guess if they don't eat, that's a pretty good indicator.
Yeah,
And
well, I both of our animals are very food motivated for sure. So that's the number one clue, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah.
Something came to mind that's it's a little bit of a tangent, but it's um just a moment ago you kind of did a quick bit using Mason's voice. And so I think like a lot of pet owners will like over time they'll sort of like either mentally or they'll explicitly almost come up with a voice that
Oh
the
yeah.
pet has. I'm curious, like how long did it take you before you established the voice that is Mason's voice? And then
Oh
how long
man.
was it before you started like regularly using it to kind of like render his inner thoughts?
Yeah, his
um
his thoughts, his personality and all those things. Yeah, I almost immediately. I mean, you
yeah.
learn over time
Yeah.
really what their personality is more like, and I think it gets refined as the years go by. Uh, that is honestly one of my more favorite conversations to have with people who do have pets. Like I've been asking friends recently, like, well, does he have a voice, or does your dog or your cat have a particular voice? Because it's funny to hear what they are. We have neighbors upstairs, Mason's. We call her his sister because they grew up together.
Okay.
And I was just up there the other night, and I was asking them. I was like, "Does Hazy have like a voice of some kind?" And it was surprisingly lower than I expected.
Mm.
Another friend has a dog named Morty, who they gave him a Mickey Mouse voice for some reason. I don't know why they didn't go with Morty, but
Yeah.
yeah. What do you have, Edgar? Does Edgar have a voice?
It's weird. I never gave him a voice. Growing up, my cat, sort of the two cats we had, definitely had a voice. And I
Oh yeah.
remember with me and our whole family would kind of like, speak on her behalf.
So yeah.
Um, but I've never come up with one for Edgar, and it's never at no point when I see him am I thinking of the voice, which is it's almost maybe that's unusual.
How old
But
is
sort of like
Edgar?
in lieu of we think around 10.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
got him later.
We
Like
got
he
him
was.
when he was 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe
So
that has something to do with it. Is like if you don't
it could
have
be,
the
yeah.
animal, from the. I guess it's also harder because I don't. I think it's easier to give a voice to a dog than a
That was
cat.
something I was maybe going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Um.
I do have like what I'll call a narration style that comes up when I'm observing him that is very distinct. It's kind of like he'll do something and I'll find myself kind of like almost like in the third person, like narrating what he has just done. And that's kind of like, I feel like that is basically just the stand-in for giving him an actual voice is all kind of
Yeah,
just, yeah.
there's I think overall, even among pet ownership, I think the idea of a voice is weird to the majority of people.
Okay, you think it's only within our little milieu that it's a common
I
thing.
think obviously there is a portion of the population who owns pets that give voices, but I think we are in the minority, not the vast minority. I bet it's probably something like 35, 65, between one and the other. I think that's something that we gained from our mother. Like she was the one that kind of gave the animals voices, and that was part of like personifying them. We were kids, it was fun, it was funny.
Yeah.
But I have definitely adopted doing that, and I do it all the time. I feel like very often two things. Number one, if I was in like a Truman Show style thing,
Yeah.
people would probably think I'm crazy
Yeah.
for how often not only do I do a Mason voice, but how often I will sing about Mason to whatever tune it is that I'm listening to. Like there are a set
Yeah.
of lyrics that I do with every song, and whatever that beat is, like it's instantaneous. And second, I'm just very grateful that I have a partner that puts up with it. It's like I just noticed that I will do this with Mason. I'll have conversations between me and Mason using my voice and his voice. It's very bizarre. I don't think I'm the only one, but I know that I do that, and I know it's weird.
On the singing thing, these are just kind of like, whatever, he's doing something, or maybe he's not doing something. It's just more that, is it very impulsive, I guess, the singing?
It's impulsive because almost no matter what tune I hear,
Yeah.
it basically, I wrote a song about Mason on the guitar, like an actual song, like with chords and a vocal progression. And those lyrics that I wrote in that song, it was just as a joke. It's not like I sat down very seriously. I'm going to write a song about my dog. Just off the cuff, I was playing guitar and it just kind of came out. But those particular lyrics have stayed. They're just the consistent lyrics that I have about him, and they don't fully make that much sense, but those lyrics just get picked up and dropped into literally any song. If I hear and I know the tune well enough, I will fit those lyrics into that pattern, like the phrasing, I guess you could say, of that particular song.
Okay. I mean, is there a sample of the lyric you can give me? You don't have to sing it right now, but
yeah, no, it's Mason. He likes to poop on the ground.
yeah.
He's long and he's a town. We call Mason Town. I know that's also pretty strange and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's all like Mason is a dog and he's long and he's town and he poops on the ground, like all those different,
Okay.
it's like those sort of ow sounds are what we work into most of the lyrics. It's like when he sleeps, he's shaped like a croissant, maçon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I gotcha. And so that actually folds well into pretty much any song
Anything.
I hear.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You could really work that into just about anything.
Ever any rap or hip hop?
And I would just like to point out that my partner is laughing at me about this right now because she's enjoying the fact that this is something that happens with some regularity. Yeah.
But no hip hop rap type.
Oh no, it'll definitely happen. If it's something that moves quicker, it's almost easier because you can just throw in words here and there. And I think the first time that I really transferred it over to a song, at this point, I don't even know what the actual lyrics are because I've just sung it in my head the same way with Mason's lyrics since then. But I was at the gym and they had it's like that Justin Timberlake song that was on, and I was just, I'm not going to be able to tell you what it is because I don't remember what the actual lyrics are to the song, but I was just in my head as I was running on the treadmill, I was listening to it and I was like, yeah, did you know my name is my song? It's like, oh yeah, just it can easily be replaced with any sort of filler words, but making sure that it's maçon, croissant, long dog. Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah. So it lends itself to kind of like freestyle, lyric creation. You can pop words in, you pop words out. It'll fit any genre as long as like the pace or the tempo, I guess, is high enough. Okay.
It doesn't, literally anything. You'll have to next time you're over, you'll just have to challenge me by playing literally any song and see if I'm work that in that way. I get how sometimes you don't realize how weird you are until somebody like spells it out for you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I'm having that moment right now.
Right now. Well, I'm glad that it's kind of an epiphany though, when you realize, there's something like very, I don't know, both, it's interesting to own a pet as a sort of like a mutual member of a couple. Because in addition to the one-to-one, like owner to pet relationship that kind of creates its own bizarre behavior, like as couples, we also have a tendency to, I think, like create our own language and our own in jokes and things like that. Just like, when I think about like a past relationship, I'm like, okay, there's like several in jokes that are like 20 layers deep. Like it was a thing based on a thing based on a thing. And now this
Yes.
20th layer is like, you can just say it and like the entirety of that like in joke history comes into play. But if a third party were to observe it, they would have no idea what you're
That
talking
is,
about. There would be no, and so you add that to the additional kind of like weird, bizarre behavior associated with the pet, and you create this whole interesting bouquet of
yeah,
behavior.
it's an in joke that you have with a being that doesn't understand what a joke is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like outright. It's just
Yeah.
like, I have this thing. Yeah, that is straight exactly what when we call Mason a town, or he's
Yeah.
being a town, like that is the epitome of that, because it's like, if I told you that he's a town, like you don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Maybe you could guess, but it would take a long amount of explanation to get to that point. Yeah. To figure
Yeah,
out.
it would be like a random thing that happened 5 years ago, and then like a reference to that, and then like
Yes.
another thing that you guys thought was funny combined, and
Combined, yes.
yeah.
And now shared with somebody in the world who just is, yeah, but there's almost no point. What I'm getting from this, and what I will have to just remind myself, is that any discussion about dogs, or your pet rather, is absolutely akin to like, I guess, an old school like wallet, like let me show you my grandkids sort of thing. Like if you are just like somebody you don't know, you would introduce to, oh, I've got some kids, yeah, let me show you some pictures. And it's like, it's the same thing. It's like, nobody cares about my dog. You know what I mean? It's like if I've got a picture of Mason doing something cute, somebody will take half a second, be like, oh, and then that's it. Like, don't care, not a big deal. It's like, I don't know your kids, I don't know your dog.
Right.
I'll just have to remember that. Like,
It's like, do you want to see the slideshow of my vacation kind of thing, where people will kind of like grudgingly accept it, but they won't necessarily enjoy it.
as to not insult the other person by their excitement over said thing. Yeah. We should have talked about the Matrix.
Yeah. No, I thought this was pretty interesting. I like coming, up with something a little bit out of left field, actually, and talking about it.
Here's a question for you as a cat owner. I think I know the answer to this, given where we live. Would you ever take Edgar out on a leash?
If in a park where I could be in an area that was not going to have any dogs suddenly show up, because I don't know how he would or I would handle that necessarily. Yeah, I've never taken him on a leash before, so that would be a new experience. You would have to be sort of like trained on the leash somewhat to the extent possible. And then you would have to get used to like being in a park out in the open, when that's like not been his lifestyle for many years now, most of his life. And then like on top of that, like there's strange people and dogs running around. So it would be a process, but I actually would like to. I'm trying to come up with a plan to actually give him more access to nature, because I know that he's bored in this apartment. He kind of came from, and when I was staying in St. Louis for several months, he had access to this nice, outdoor screened in porch, and it was his favorite place in the world. He loved it. He was there. He would have been there 24 hours a day if I had let him. And so now he's in this like relatively small New York 1-bedroom apartment, and he pretty much mostly sees me. And I would love to give him like that freedom. So a leash or something like it has been kind of percolating in my mind as a possibility for a while now.
Yeah, I guess a big difference between dog ownership and cat ownership is, I don't know exactly how to like get into the point of this, but if your cat is afraid and you have to pick it up to get it away from the danger that is imminent, like a dog sees Edgar outside, you're out on a leash, that is immediately going to harm you, because cats have claws. Right. And Edgar will freak out in that way where his claws will get all over you. You will come out of that wounded for sure and bleeding in that experience.
Yeah.
Where I guess if a dog, if I pick Mason up, he doesn't really have the capacity to do that,
Yeah.
Do you think Edgar tries to
planned?
Do you think Edgar tries to kill you ever?
No.
Because I know that's a thing. Like cats do, maybe they don't try to kill you, but you get what I mean, right? Like cats kind of plot and they kind of do things that are like, sometimes you have to question whether or not they really love you.
Edgar, well, so I have no doubt about that. I think that, Edgar's basically attached to me almost all day. He's like, I have to sleep right next to you. If you're sitting in the chair, I need to be in that chair with you, whatever. That said, there is I'm not going to say he tries to kill me or anything like that, but I will say that there's a definite power play that will occur. He'll, if he's upset that I didn't feed him something he liked, I'm positive, he'll start scratching furniture. He's like, fuck this, basically, is his message to me. If I'm like late coming home, if I've been away for a long time, like he will scratch the furniture as well. It's kind of like you bastard, like you bastard, like, do that. And there are chairs and such in the apartment that are de facto his. I sit in it. He's like, he comes up immediately after and he's looking at me like, what are you doing there? You do not belong there. And then he'll sit in the chair and I let him. So yeah.
That's part of it, right? Is that you enable the behavior.
Oh, of course. And that's fine though. I don't care.
Yeah. Small price to pay, I guess, for being allowed to be in their presence. Yeah.
I think it's a little different for cats and dogs in that sense, just that because he's not going to interact with other cats, but I think that to enable that kind of behavior with the dog that's going to socialize with other dogs and other people, I think it's probably more important to be like, no, you actually cannot do that here.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yes. Dogs are gamblers.
Okay.
And they're pretty good gamblers because they don't ever stop gambling. They're the greatest gamblers in the world. Like it's the same thing where if I'm in the kitchen, Mason will go to the kitchen because what else has he got going on? It's like, I might as well go to the kitchen because maybe something will fall and then I'll get it and I'll be happy about that. And I think if you give leeway ever on something, that dog will remember and try to exploit that same path forward forever. And make your life very sad. It's like if you have a dog and you don't want the dog in the bed, never let the dog in the bed once. Because as soon as you do, that's all that's ever going to be good enough for that dog. And
permanently
the dog,
a possibility in their mind.
Permanently a possibility. And the dog will gamble that for the rest of its life. And you will fail enough times that eventually the dog will just be allowed in the bed. Mason is not allowed in the bed. He's only allowed on a certain part of the couch, and he tries to get over to the other part of the couch, but we're pretty good about saying, nope, this is your section.
Yeah.
You need to be right here. And, it's working out so far. We'll see if he wears us down.
Gets you on a day when you're out of willpower. You're like tired.
Out of willpower. Yeah. Which is very possible. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Any thoughts? I mean, what's your overall review of, because we have to at least do a final verdict.
Final review?
Yeah. Do you recommend?
Yeah. I don't think that pet ownership is for everybody.
Okay.
Wait a second. No. How do I want to phrase this? Have you seen Ratatouille, right?
No.
Oh, you should see Ratatouille. The whole conceit of the movie is that there's a chef that has a book called Anyone Can Cook.
Okay.
Meaning, and I guess because he's a famous chef, a lot of people take umbrage of that because no, you're a brilliant chef. And it's certainly there are people in the world that can't cook, but the concept there is that it's not that anyone can cook. It's that anyone has the capability to cook.
Yes.
Should they want to do that. And I think that's how I feel about pet ownership. It's like anyone can own a pet, but that's not quite what it is. It's like anyone who has the capacity or the interest or the desire for it has the ability to be a great pet owner, but I'm of a firm belief that you should not, unless you're going to be a great pet owner. Yeah. Like that should be a non-starter. Is like, don't be the kind of pet owner that never walks their dog, or even worse, like leashes their dog and just puts it outside and doesn't interact with it. And it just kind of wraps itself around a tree and then goes back the other way. Like nothing is more frustrating to me than that, where it's like, why do you even have a dog?
Why? Yeah.
What's the point of that? I think there are certain, this is maybe a little different for the dogs and cats thing, but there are also a lot of really strong, deadly breeds that I don't think people should have. You know, I think it takes a certain kind of person to be able to own a German Shepherd or a Rottweiler or a Pit Bull. I think they're all great dogs and can be great dogs, but if you are not a strong person, don't get the Pit Bull.
Yeah.
You know,
Don't
get
get the super smart dogs that need like constant stimulation, and they really should be like herding sheep or something. And not,
exactly. I desperately want a blue heeler. It's my favorite, like solid breed, like a purebred dog that I think is just the coolest dog in the world. And it's tempting to get one because I want one so badly, but I would never do it here because it would be denying that dog its entire instinct, which is to run fast in a giant field for hours, you know, like that's what it deserves. So that's my final appraisal is I think pet ownership is great, but it takes a certain kind. And just like anything in life, you should really plan ahead and you should be prepared for what that actually means. Don't just frivolously do it.
Agreed, 100%. I can't add anything to that. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, this has been a good one. You know, I'm glad that we strayed a little bit out of entertainment, talk about something else. So,
Yeah. Cool.